The staggering scope of U.S. gun deaths goes far beyond mass shootings. This is by Mark Berman, Lenny Bernstein, Dan Keating, Andrew Bartron, and Artur Galocha. Illustrations by Alvaro Valino for The Washington Post, originally published on July 8, 2022. The spate of shooting attacks in communities such as Highland Park, Illinois, Uvalde, Texas, and Buffalo have riveted attention on America's staggering number of public mass killings. But the rising number of gun deaths in the United States extends beyond such high-profile episodes, emerging nearly every day inside homes, outside bars, and on the streets of many cities, according to federal data. The surge in gun violence comes as firearm purchases rose to record levels in 2020 and 2021, with more than 43 million guns estimated to have been purchased during that period, according to a Washington Post analysis of federal data on gun background checks. At the same time, the rate of gun deaths in those years hit the highest level since 1995, with more than 45,000 fatalities each year. That's a damn shame. Guns are used in most suicides and are almost entirely responsible for an overall rise in homicides across the country from 2018 to 2021, according to data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Spikes in gun sales and climbing deaths. The pandemic and notable events triggered surges in gun sales. This shows changes in both sales and deaths since 2010, 250% above 2010 levels. So here are gun purchases with a big spike, I believe, in 2013. Firearm deaths stayed consistent as the gun purchases relatively increased, I would say, over the years. Sandy Hook, wow. So when kids got killed at an elementary school, people bought 153% more guns. Insane. George Floyd happened, 228% increase in gun ownership. And then, 180% more when the racists ran up in the Capitol. And as you can see by the chart, every time there's a mass event where people should come together and say, hey, maybe our society is too violent, people say, you know what, we need more guns. America has lied to you. America is sick. Wake up from the matrix. The gun does not make you American. It's only leading to more death and destruction in our streets. Period. Abolish the Second Amendment. Estimated gun sales and death rates for homicides, suicides, and accidental events are seasonally adjusted. The source for this is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and Mortality Data, FBI National Instant Criminal Background Check System. For the record, by the way, guys, I come with data and facts. All the people who attack me in my comments talking about, you don't know what you're talking about, abolish the Second Amendment is stupid, we need guns to make us American. What is your solution then for the 45,000 Americans who die every year from a preventable cause such as gun violence? What is your solution? What is your solution? Is it to buy more guns? Because as we can see, when you buy more guns, you stupid motherfuckers, more people die. So what is your option? What is your solution? How can we make America safer? Or do you not want America to be safer? Do you really just want to continue to see the bloodshed tarnish our streets? Over the long 4th of July weekend, when 7 people were killed and dozens wounded at a parade in Highland Park, numerous other fatal shootings played out across the country. In nearby Chicago, 10 people were killed and more than 60 wounded in a string of shootings over the weekend. 1 person was killed and 4 were wounded in a shooting outside a Sacramento nightclub. 2 people were shot to death at a home in Halton City, Texas, and a neighbor and 3 police officers were injured. A man was fatally shot in Clinton, North Carolina. Hours later, 6 people, including 2 children, were injured in a separate shooting there. Once again, people want to bring up Chicago just to delineate or obfuscate the problem when we had the 4th of July shooting. For some reason, the right-wing reactionary nuts, whenever a mass shooting happens, and it's one of their guys, one of their Trump-loving right-wing guys that do it, they say either it's a psyop, it's fake, it never happened, or secondly, why don't you talk about Chicago? Neither one in those cases. Both situations, the right-wing reactionaries don't have a solution. They don't say any solution for Chicago. They don't have any solution for the 4th of July shooting or the numerous other right-wing targeted shootings that happen. They just say Chicago and want to hide behind that because they're fucking pussy. They're fucking pussies, and I hate those people. I talk about Chicago all the time on my channel. Go check out my video on Chicago, the definitive video on Chicago gun violence, and all the other mass shootings I've covered all across the country, because it's not Chicago, you stupid son of a bitch. It's America. It's America that's sick. It's America that has a gun problem. It's America that wants to destroy itself. There is not one clear answer as to what is driving the rise in bloodshed, experts said, but possible factors include the stress of the coronavirus pandemic, fraying ties between the police and the public, mounting anger, worsening mental strain, and the sheer number of guns in America. You put all that into a pressure cooker, said Alex Piquero, a criminologist at the University of Miami, and you let the pressure cooker blow up. Local leaders, law enforcement officials, and anti-violence workers say they have seen a worrisome trend recently in which disputes that would have previously led to fistfights instead escalated rapidly into gunfire. People use the hands. Use your hands, boy. What we're seeing is a different type of violence here in Pittsburgh, said the Reverend Eileen Smith, executive director of the South Pittsburgh Coalition for Peace, a nonprofit that includes violence interrupters. They're not fighting, at least not outside of school. They're killing. For all the community organizers and people who are trying to, tell the community, put the guns down. We've had these movements for years. For years, people have said, gangs, put the guns down. Everybody, let's come together. Let's hold hands. Let's have peace. But you can't have peace in a society with weapons of mass destruction. When you have kids running around with Dracos, AR-15s, AK-47s, 9mm with extended clips, all sorts of shit, you'll never have peace. No matter how many times we have, gang interventions, community intervention, all this bullshit, like all this community organizing shit needs to stop. Abolish the Second Amendment, period. Get rid of the fucking guns because you'll continue to have bloodshed. No matter how many truces we had. Wasn't there a truce between the Bloods and the Crips in the 90s? How did that work out? Rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Hussle was killed by a Crip. Regardless, people are so stupid. They'll take anything I say and twist it just to say, like, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. What I'm talking about is Americans killing Americans, and I'm offering a solution. Do you have a solution, or do you just have an angry ass comment you want to write, you pussy? All right, the ample access to guns plays a significant role, experts said. Americans are arming themselves in the face of deepening fears and divisions, frightening public incidents involving gunfire or violence, or simply because they know others may also have guns. Data shows that gun sales increase in the wake of violence, political events, and uncertainty. Large spikes occurred after the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting, amid coronavirus shutdowns, racial justice protests, and the presidential election of 2020, and after the January 6, 2021 siege of the U.S. Capitol. And as I've said in my previous video about who owns guns in America, hate to break it to you, and I'm not trying to villainize white men because I have no problem with white men, but the majority of people who see kids get killed in an elementary school, hear about a pandemic, see a black man get his life snuffed out by the knee of a police officer, and see, people literally try to take over the government, the people that buy guns after they see that are older white men. I've said it. The data supports it. Go check out the video I did about that. Why? White guys, why? Can y'all chill? I don't understand. If I was a white man in America, I would never feel the need to own a gun. I can call the police and they're like my homies. They could kill anybody I want. Like, I don't get it. If I was white in America, what would be the need of owning guns? You don't need them. You have the superpower of privilege. Last night we went to the club and the DJ was playing a song. And Karen decides to come up to the DJ and request a song. And she's like batting her blue eyes and like flicking her blonde hair. She's like, hey, can you play a song? And I'm like, bitch, who the fuck do you think you are? Like, white people, I don't know why. Like, y'all have so much privilege. Just let it be. Let it be, bro. You don't, if you're white, you don't need a gun. I'm serious. Let's just be real. If you're white, you don't need a gun. America is the safest place to be a white person in the world. The greatest place to be a white person in the world, bro. Put the guns down, white people. White men, stop it. Stop. Get some help. Michael Jordan meme. Anyway, I'm ranting. With an estimated 400 million guns in the country, that's almost one gun per U.S. citizen. That's an estimation. 400 million guns in the entire country. A figure that eclipses the U.S. population. Oh, there's only 350 million of us? Really? I don't believe that's true, actually. I believe there's an undercount in the census. I believe there's actually 400 million Americans. But let's say this is true. I'm just reading the article. There is a self-fulfilling prophecy of, I need a gun because everyone else around me has a gun. said Sasha Cotton, director of the Minneapolis Office of Violence Prevention. And Americans are brainwashed and they're fucking stupid. And it's not their fault. American society has lied to you. Whoever told you that the Second Amendment is your God-given right written in the Constitution and it's absolutely necessary and imperative to keeping a free and democratic society, you're absolutely wrong. Because we've had guns forever in America, and America is far from a democracy. Every American would agree that we are not fully represented in our elected officials. So you guys had guns forever. Has that kept our democracy? Has that not stopped rich and powerful corporations from buying politicians? Has that not stopped rich and powerful people from becoming politicians and then almost literally destroying the government? No, it has not. The gun has not helped American democracy stay any safer. In fact, it's only made it worse. It's only hardened the people that want to keep the status quo. Right? The agonizing frequency of non-fatal shootings and firearm deaths, experts said, has become a uniquely American phenomenon. Many other countries have disadvantaged folks who are angry and alienated, said Richard Burke, a professor emeritus of criminology and statistics at the University of Pennsylvania. But guns aren't there. Oh, I wonder why we don't have mass shootings in Turkey. I wonder why we don't have mass shootings in Iraq that aren't terrorist attacks. I wonder why. Those people are poor. Those people are angry. Some of them are even stupid. Some of them get into dumbass fights. Some of them want to kill their wives and kill their grandmothers and run up in schools and kill 20 kids. I wonder why they can't do it. I don't know why. Babe, I don't know why. I don't know why. It's so weird. Only in America can you go to school and your 7-year-old daughter gets a bullet in her head and the other kids have to put blood on them to hide from the shooter, to pretend like they're dead. Only in America, right? But people have more anger for me rather than they do this situation. And they want to buy more and more guns. Fuck the United States. Fuck American society. I'll say it straight up. You people are fucking stupid. The mass toll of gun deaths, mass killings, particularly those in which a gunman opens fire in a crowded public space, tend to draw much more attention than daily violence. But these shootings represent a fraction of gun violence overall, said Gillian Peterson, an associate professor of criminology and criminal justice at Hamline University and co-founder of the Violence Project, which studies mass killers, defining a mass shooting as four or more people killed. Peterson said such cases account for fewer than 1% of all people killed by firearms. They are very rare still, even though they're increasing, she said. But Peterson said it's not an accident that they receive so much more attention. Mass shootings by design are meant to go viral in that sense. That's the goal of them, is fame, is notoriety, she said. And these public mass shootings have a psychological impact on people, instilling fear of going to the movies or a grocery store, she said. Monday's rampage in Illinois marked the 15th time this year that four or more people were killed in a shooting, according to Gun Violence Archive, a nonprofit that maintains a database of incidents of gun violence. The vast majority of gun deaths in America are either suicides or homicides, according to federal data, with accidental or undetermined gun deaths representing a small fraction of the overall share. Two different demographic groups bear the brunt of escalating gun violence and are more likely to die of a gunshot wound in America: young black men and older white men. White men are 6 times as likely to die by suicide as other Americans. Black men are 17 times as likely to be killed with gunfire by someone else. This is why, in the Black Lives Matter movement, the Second Amendment abolition movement should be a part of it. There shouldn't be a single black leader today who is advocating for more black men and women to buy guns, period. If you are telling our people that, you are irresponsible, and fuck you with all of my heart. Any black leader, any black person advocating for more gun ownership is only advocating for our death, because the more guns there are in society, the more people will die. The more people will handle petty, stupid disputes with gunfire. And the more likely police are to shoot at us because they think we're armed. People want to bring up the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers did some good things. Their free breakfast program, educating the people about Marxism, communist revolutions, etc. But many of the Black Panthers ended up in jail for years for crimes that some of them did not commit. Asada had to leave America and go to Cuba. Can never come back to the States and be with her family. Many of the Black Panthers, though I agree with their ideology, fucked themselves over by carrying the gun and worshiping the gun. There's a reason the Nation of Islam is still here today, and the Black Panthers in their original sense weren't. The gun was their downfall. I repeat, the gun was their downfall, and I'll tell you why. The Black Panthers themselves knew that there could never be a Black Panther armed revolution to take over the United States or whatever, right? They kept the guns for self-defense, to police the community, to police the police, right? But when the police planted guns on them, illegal guns, when the police charged them for murders that they didn't do, when the police set them up, the gun was their downfall. There was a reason why you could never have Farrakhan, sitting in jail for a murder, because the Nation of Islam says explicitly, no guns. We are against carrying guns. And while I have many disagreements with the Nation of Islam as well, they're still one of the few organizations around advocating for Black enlightenment, our freedom of consciousness, etc., right? The Black Panthers fucked themselves over by worshiping the gun. The Black Panthers today would still be around, and many of our leaders would still be around. Fred Hampton, Assata, so many, Huey P., many would still be around if they did not have love for the gun, period. And if you don't think that's true, tell me why these boys got sent to jail. Yes, because of white supremacy, because the COINTELPRO, that sort of thing. But if you don't have the guns around, if they could never plant drugs on, let's say, I don't know, Bill Gates, right? Or any non-drug using person, right? But if you find a guy who does weed and you plant coke on him, he's more likely to get sentenced for that coke because he was already a known drug user, right? Do you get what I'm saying? The Black Panthers got that treatment by the U.S. If I'm wrong, tell me what really happened, because the history is those guys are sitting in jail forever. Innocent black men, the Black Panthers, are sitting in jail forever. Some are dead. Some were killed as teenagers and kids. Some had to flee the country. Why? Because of the gun, the stupid ass gun. It was dumb. It was dumb. It was a bad part of strategy. It was effective marketing, but it was bad strategy. If I'm wrong, tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why. Please. Anyway, I have love for the Black Panthers. That's not a rant on the Black Panthers. But as black people, black men like me, continue to die at a high rate because of gun violence, we need to stop advocating for gun ownership, period. It's not in our best interest. It's not helping us, period. We're not men, because when the white boys show up and they see all those black guys with guns who want to play Black Panther and say, revolution, all power to the people. When the white boys pull up, y'all turning in the guns. Y'all not shooting it out. And y'all shouldn't. We should stay alive, not die, right? About 60% of gun deaths in the United States each year are suicides, according to CDC data spanning the past 20 years. Gun deaths are skewed by race. The highest gun death rates are homicides for young black men and suicide for older white men. White people are far more likely to kill themselves with guns than to be shot by others. And black people are more likely to be killed by someone else than to kill themselves. Rates for women are much lower than for men. Here's how it goes. So American Indian or Alaskan Native, the older ones are committing more suicide. Younger ones, 45 to 54, are committing some homicides or being killed by homicides. So this is a still, right? Here's for black men. This is insane. This is truly insane. Asians, nil. Black Americans, wow. Hispanic Americans, wow. White Americans, wow. Stop killing yourselves, guys. Stop it. Black people stop killing each other, right? And police stop killing us. Police stop killing everybody. And people stop killing the police. Black women, more homicides, more likely to be killed by homicides than suicides. Hispanic women, almost nil. White women, they're chilling. All right. Firearms accounted for about 8% of suicide attempts, but slightly more than 50% of the 47,511 suicide deaths in 2019, according to the American Association of Suicidology. Men are nearly 4 times as likely as women to die in a suicide attempt, mainly because they are much more likely to use a gun. Of the 90,498 gun deaths in 2020 and 2021, 38,796 were homicides. Nearly 21,000 of those victims were black men. Okay? Cotton in Minneapolis said the higher homicide toll among black people brought to mind the saying, when America gets a cold, black Americans get the flu. Of course it's worse, she said. COVID was worse for us. Gun violence is worse for us. And the trickle down effects will continue to be worse for us until there's equity in our systems and in our society. Data show gun deaths surged almost everywhere in America in 2020, a very broad phenomenon and one that was almost as intense outside of metro areas as it was inside of metropolitan areas, said Philip J. Cook, a Duke University professor emeritus of public policy and economics. In 2020, while the overall crime rate nationwide fell, that was not true for shootings, Cook said. That year, he said there was an unparalleled surge in people killed by firearms compared with 2019. Comparing states with easy access to guns and greater restrictions. So let's go down here. There's some slides up. Southern and western states allow greater access to guns than most states in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast and on the West Coast. The states in darker purple with easier access to guns show greater number of gun purchases and in many cases steep increases in gun deaths from 2010 through 2020. What a surprise. The more guns, the more people die. Stupid motherfuckers. The orange line shows each state's gun purchases with spikes in 2020, such as in Louisiana, where I'm from. The black line tracks the gun death rate at the same time. Illinois has tighter rules than nearby states and lower purchase rates than neighboring Missouri, Kentucky, and Indiana, but guns move across borders and the homicide rate is similar to the neighbors' rates. Some states, including New Jersey, have tightened gun laws in recent weeks in response to recent shootings and a Supreme Court decision that expanded gun carry rights outside the home. At the federal level, Congress last month approved and President Biden signed gun control legislation that provides funding for mental health services and school security initiatives and expands criminal background checks for some gun buyers. Yeah, the fact that kids have to go to school with a bulletproof backpack is embarrassing. The United States of America is embarrassing. States with tighter laws have lower death rates. Using the Gifford Center rating of state gun laws, the states with more restrictive gun laws have had fewer purchases and have much lower suicide rates. That's good. We want to prevent suicide. Suicide is never the answer. I don't like that anybody commits suicide. Homicide rates are comparable to those in states with somewhat looser laws, but much more lower than in those states with the easiest access to guns. Post-analysis found. So, firearm homicides per million residents, firearm suicides per million residents, purchases per 1,000 residents. So, state gun laws that are restrictive and permissive, it's like this. So, when you have restrictive, firearm homicide rate goes up. All right. When we have firearm suicides per million residents, like this, and purchases per 1,000 resident, definite correlation. All right. So yeah, but yeah, these are the restrictive states right here, and these are the permissive states. Oh God. So the more loose the gun laws, of course, the more suicides and homicides. That goes without saying. So, determining the precise number of guns sold in America each year is difficult. The data does not capture weapon sales from private sellers at gun shows or online marketplaces because the law does not require them to submit background checks. Firearm sales estimates are based on methodology applied to FBI National Instant Criminal Background Check System data, surveying handgun, long gun, and multiple gun background checks leading to purchases. There is little consensus as to why gun sales and deaths have jumped so much over the past 2 years. The only clear thing, Cook said, is that the increase in homicide was almost entirely an increase in gun homicide. Beyond that, it is difficult to parse all the things happening at once. Even the theories that have been floated about the rise in violence have weaknesses, experts said, adding that there is a lack of good research about what is driving the increase. I'll tell you what's driving the increase: the marketing by the gun manufacturers, the apathy of the right-wing conservative parties. The aggressiveness of these right-wing conservative parties that advocate for the Second Amendment, and the apathy of the left when it comes to gun violence. Because let's be honest, the Democrats, particularly, but the entire left in America is scared shitless of the Second Amendment people, the gun rights people. But these guys are pussy. As we can see, they're killing themselves more than they're killing other people. When they ran up in the Capitol, they didn't even lay nothing down, and should not have. I don't think that the people who ran up in the Capitol should have been there armed. Trump wanted them armed, as we found out from the January 6th commission hearing. So, yeah, the left should not be afraid to advocate for abolishing the Second Amendment, which is why we are in this situation today, because both parties, all ideologies, left and right in America, are not to the point of the gun violence being so unacceptable that we need to get rid of the guns entirely. Even though it's the absolute right thing to do and it's the most sensible thing to do, and it's probably the most American thing to do, right? Because we love to get rid of things or freedoms that people have, right? Take away other people's freedoms all the time. So let's take away this one. This one is not helping anybody. It's not helping anybody. Some experts theorize that the pandemic helped drive the surge in killings, but gun deaths started rising in 2015 before spiking 5 years later, said Andrew Morale, a behavioral scientist at the Rand Corp and the leader of its Gun Policy in America initiative. The rise in gun sales, he said, might also play a role, but the real question in my mind is that the key driver? Does that explain a lot of the jump or a little of the jump, he said? And I don't know. These people who say these things are supposedly the most educated, the most well-versed on this topic. But if you can see constant correlation between the more guns that come into society, the more gun deaths and homicides there are, how do you not see? How do you not see this? How do you not see this? Gun deaths are approaching rates of early 1990s. Deaths dropped in the mid-1990s from peak levels. Suicide began climbing again around 2005, and homicides around 2014. So from 1980, this was per 100,000 residents, 6.9 suicides, 6.5 in 1980. In 1990, when I was born, it was 7.6 suicides per 100,000 residents and 6.5 per 100,000 residents. Okay. Federal law, the federal Brady law for nationwide background checks was passed, and then the homicides decreased. Wow, I wonder why. Over the next 5 years, they decreased. And also there was the federal assault weapons ban in 1995, right? And that decreased all that as well. The homicides went down to 3.8 by 2000. The suicides maintained 5.9, but they steadily increased over that decade over the next 2 decades till 2012. All right. And manufacturers and dealers protected from most liability. Yeah, I think that was the Supreme Court case that said you can't sue a gun manufacturer for a mass shooting, right? Because they're making weapons that cause weapons of war, right? Because, right, they all, you know what they say, guns don't kill people, people kill people, right? So let's sell them guns and let's see what happens to our elementary schools, in our churches, in our supermarkets, right? Fuck the gun manufacturers and fuck the gun lobbyists. Homicide rates remain low for more than 2 decades before 2015, even as the number of guns in circulation was increasing. Morale said, if the gun sales drove the spike, why did that not happen over those decades? Morale said one theory, claiming that police pulled back in response to racial justice protests and calls to cut funding in 2020, has problems because the surge in violence happened across the board, in urban areas and rural ones, in blue cities and red. American policing is decentralized, with some 15,000 local departments and sheriff's offices, most of them employing no more than 24 officers. Gun homicides rate rose in urban, suburban, and rural areas. So everywhere across America, it's not just Chicago, you stupid right-wing son of a bitch. It's not just Chicago, it's everywhere. All the major places, suburbs, rural areas, outside major urban areas. It's happening everywhere. Morrill said there is some evidence of police pulling back, but that making the link from depolicing to homicides is a big jump to grow. Beyond anecdote, he said, more research is needed. There's certainly people who will claim it's not mysterious and point at one thing or another, said Burke, the University of Pennsylvania professor emeritus, but I haven't heard a coherent narrative which integrates all the pieces, and I'm not sure we'll have one, right? Cook, the Duke University professor emeritus, said increased efforts to solve shootings could help get a handle on the surge in violence, even if its precise drivers are unknown. Police nationwide in 2020 cleared about half of all homicides, according to the FBI, which usually means that someone was arrested and charged or the case was closed another way, including the death of the attacker. Solving more shootings, particularly non-fatal ones, would interrupt the cycle of retaliation, Cook said, and might improve local trust in the police. That would be a productive use of money. Uh, so putting more people in jail forever because they crashed out and did something dumb, I don't think that's sustainable. We can't keep on going this way, increasing gun sales, allowing more people to kill themselves and kill other people, putting people in jail for those murders or for those manslaughters and homicides, and that causes more tax burden on society. That's absolutely unsustainable. The goal is not to increase the prison population, even if these people are violent criminals. But I'm repeating, there shouldn't be violent criminals because we allow them to do stupid shit and crash out because we make the guns available. It's so fucking simple. Does this happen in Canada? Does this happen in France? Does this happen in Germany? Does this happen in Spain? Does this happen in Italy? No, it does not. Not to the extent that it happens in the United States of America. With that being said, let's have sensible gun policy by saying, you know what, no more free willy-nilly gun ownership for everybody. Stop it. Get some help. Get some help, America. Get some fucking help. All right. It's also difficult to determine exactly who will commit gun violence, though research shows that politicians and others may be focusing too much attention on one factor, particularly when it comes to mass shootings. A persistent refrain. In the wake of mass shootings, politicians are often quick to invoke mental health. Anybody who shoots somebody else has a mental health challenge, period. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, fuck you, said shortly after the Uvalde shooting in May. But 3 decades of research has established that people with mental illness are responsible for just a small percentage of interpersonal and gun violence. So it's not just crazy people. Numerous studies have reached the same conclusion. While people with illnesses such as schizophrenia have a somewhat greater risk of committing violent acts than other members of the public, and substance use increases that risk, the vast majority of people with mental illness never perpetrate violence. In fact, they are more likely to be the victims of violence. Period. Now, by our standards, what is crazy? Everybody would say the Uvalde shooter was crazy. You have to be crazy to run up in a school and kill 20 kids. Everybody would say the white supremacist in Buffalo was crazy because you have to be crazy to run in a supermarket and kill 10 black grandmothers, right? But the vast majority of the mass shootings that I cover on my channel all the time, it's not like some crazy guy did that. The number of mass shootings in America are done by people who have stupid ass arguments or over trivial shit, or it's domestic violence. I see this every day when I cover them on my channel. It's not crazy people. Yes, the big ones we hear about are actually not people who are, I don't know how to say this. They're not, yeah, they're probably not, well, they probably have some mental illness, some undiagnosed mental illness, but these people, these are the exception. These are not the rule. The vast majority of the mass shootings that happen in America are done by people who just are passionate about something in the heat of a moment and go crazy, right? So, yeah. Stop talking about mental health, the left and the right, because the left and the right like to do this. Right-wing people, whenever there's a mass shooting, they hear about 30 people killed in a church, which did happen. I'm not making that number up. 30 people got killed in a fucking church, bro. Anyway, when they hear about that, they say thoughts and prayers, and we need to focus on mental health. But then they never even pass legislation for mental health because the right-wing are obsessed with cutting government spending for everything except building more oil rigs and digging for more, rare earth minerals in like Texas and Oklahoma and shit, fracking. Yeah, you got all the money for that, but you don't even have the money for the mental health problem that you say exists. I'm sorry. And then what does the left do? The left says we need more gun control and restrictions, and we need to focus on mental health. But nobody's talking about the big issue about the fact that there are too many guns in America. There's one gun for every American in the United States. That's sad. And that's just an estimate. That's an estimate. All right. There is one major well-established connection between mental illness and gun violence: suicide. A RAND report summarizing other studies found higher rates of suicide among people with mental health issues that included depression and schizophrenia. It's clear that many other factors are more closely associated with gun violence than mental illness. They include experiencing trauma and gun violence during childhood, being young and male, living in neighborhoods where violence is more prevalent, poor impulse control, poor anger control, and perhaps most of all, easy access to a firearm. To think we're going to lower population level violence rates by better treatment of mental illness, we're not going to get there doing that, said Daniel Webster, who studies gun violence policy at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Instead, he said, officials must help create environments where there is less trauma in the home, support families, and strengthen services for children in schools. In 1994, Duke University gun violence researcher Jeffrey W. Swanson calculated that if all active psychotic and mood disorders were eliminated overnight, the interpersonal violence would be reduced by just 4%. Let's make that clear. Let's summarize that. If we eliminated mental illness, like we had a cure for all mental illness in the world, like in America at least, the rate of gun violence would only drop by 4%. Think about that. In many other countries, guns are tightly restricted, but the United States has taken a different route, he said. We don't have gun control as much as we have people control, he said. We try to figure out the people who are so dangerous that we have to limit their access to guns. Yeah, that's chasing. What's the expression? Like the dog chasing its tail. Like we're never going to catch it. You can never. That's a very good point. I've never thought about that before. We don't have gun control. We don't have serious gun control because I could go get a gun very easily. I go back to the States in a day with $400, I could have a gun, right? We have people control. We are just trying to track the people that we think will commit mass violence or the people who have done violence in the past, and we try to block them from getting guns, right? It's sad. The 1998 MacArthur Violence Risk Assessment Study, which followed 951 people who had been released from 3 psychiatric facilities, found that 23 committed 67 acts of interpersonal gun violence, a rate of 2% in the next year. Just 19 of those acts committed by 9 people were against strangers. So most likely, they did these acts. Okay, most of them used the gun. These crazy people that were released from this psychiatric facility, they went back home and only hurt their abusive father or whoever, right? They hurt somebody they knew, which is bad, which shouldn't happen, period. Research conducted in 2020 by a team led by Swanson found that among people in Florida with serious mental illnesses, including some who were committed to a psychiatric facility involuntarily for a short-term emergency hold, 0.9% were arrested for a violent crime involving a gun within 7 years, about the same rate as the general population. Recent years have been brutal for Americans' mental health, with the CDC finding that rates of anxiety and depression tripled nationwide. But there is no reason to believe that is responsible for rising gun violence over the past 2 years, said Jennifer Scheme, a clinical psychologist and professor of public policy and social welfare at the University of California at Berkeley. The consistent invocations of mental health have, after massacres such as those in Buffalo, Uvalde, and Highland Park, are ways for officials to distance themselves from the horror of the event to explain the unfathomable, Scheme said. Yeah, when people start... Yeah, it's been said. It's been said. I've already said it, not to repeat. It's a tragedy that demands explanation, and the stigma of mental illness is something that fuels pseudo-explanations, she said. It's a fake explanation. Why has this man done this terrible thing? The answer is simply because he's mentally ill. How do you know he's mentally ill? Because he's done this terrible thing. Yeah, it's circular. It's circular logic. The most common mass killings, Peterson said, are those that typically get the least public attention. Household killings, yes, in which someone kills their relatives and then themselves. I've covered these stories all the time. It's like a repeating pattern. Man kills 3-year-old son, then his wife and 2 neighbors, and shoots it out with the police. That's probably like exactly a story that happened either last week or will happen next week unless we change the policy. Nobody wants this to happen. I'm not making these YouTube videos for clout. I'm not trying to come up off people dying. I'm trying to advocate for a cause. And the cause that I want to see happen is all Americans, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, everybody be safe. That's all. That's all. Let's make America safer again. Let's make America safe again, if it ever was safe, right? In that sense, those mass killings have something in common with most other gun violence in America. People tend to know their killers, according to FBI data. Commonly, the victim and the perpetrators know each other or know about each other, Burke said. They're not total strangers. It makes it even more sad. So, if you or someone you know needs help, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at this number or visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. So, I think it goes without saying, you know, that America is really at a crossroads. And unfortunately, knowing America as an American, I think that we will continue to allow the gun culture to permeate and exist. More people will continue to believe in the Second Amendment bullshit that it makes us American or it makes us safer. This article really changed my mind about something. How mental health is used as a shield and a stigma to stop from talking about the real issue. Because before reading this, I did actually believe that mental health is a problem, that I actually thought that many of the people who do commit these mass shootings are crazy, but that's actually not the case, which makes it even more sad and depressing, but also bolsters my point even more that these guns are being used by somewhat rational people in irrational situations. Therefore, take the guns from these rational people, and then we'll have much less deaths and violence, period. So, my name is Simon Hill. Thank you for watching. Abolish the Second Amendment. All lives matter. Blue lives matter. Black lives matter. Thank you.